Hi, everybody. Welcome to another PR Tech Wednesday. It's Wednesday at 12 o'clock in LA, so it is time for another edition of PR Tech Wednesdays. Our guest today, my longtime friend and colleague, Deirdre Breckenridge.
Hi, Eric.
I misspelled Breckenridge. Is it pronounced Breckenridge?
No, so it's pronounced Breckenridge, but it's not spelled like Colorado. So that's everybody thinks it's spelled like Colorado. So it's a Scottish name. It's actually not my maiden name. It's my ex-husband's name. He let me keep it because it's my daughter's name. So,
I see.
But in Scottish, it's Breckenridge.
I see. Got it.
So, but we
And
say Breckenridge.
did he wear a kilt to the?
No.
Was there a bagpiper or anything there?
No, he didn't. But
Okay.
I love the name too. I mean, it's a pretty cool name.
Great name.
Thanks.
Yeah. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a conversation about how clients buy PR.
Nice.
This is going to be our 2020 PR agency buyer's guide.
Great.
And hopefully it will be as useful for clients as it is for agencies. So let's start with just an open discussion about kind of why does a client decide to hire PR? What is it that motivates a client to hire PR, either in-house, or why would they decide to do it themselves? Right. Or hire a boutique or a small firm or a mid-sized firm or a large firm, whatever are there common themes behind why someone buys PR?
Yes. So I would say in my experience, it's usually three things that I would hear, and in no particular order. Brand awareness. We've got to get our brand out there. We need brand awareness. We've got a reputation issue. we need PR. And the third one is, why don't we ever get any media coverage? How come we're not getting media? So those are the three things that I felt. I was an agency owner for a long time. I think it was 14 years. Now I am a consultant, but I help companies sometimes find the right agencies as a part of my role.
So how do you go about it? Like if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I need help finding a PR firm, what questions are you going to ask me to help me figure out what type of firm I should buy?
So it's, what are you trying to do? So what are your goals, first off? How do you see PR and what are you trying to achieve? And then they usually share about how we're communicating, these are the channels we're using, who are you trying to reach, and how is that working? And once you can learn what they're trying to do and who it is, you can then kind of step back and say, okay, let's take a look at the communication, your culture, your resources, and we can start to figure out maybe there are some agencies that would be a match. And it's interesting because in some cases, you might say, well, we have a specific need and we want an agency that has contacts, that has media contacts. They know their way around. We don't want to waste any time. Let's do that. So they say, we want this big agency. But then when they look at the big agency and the big agency wants to charge them $20,000 a month, but their budget is only for $7,500 or $10,000, that's going to change things. So there are a number of things that you're going to find out. And remember, your agency is an extension of your company and your marketing department. So the way that you operate has to be the way that they're going to operate. And do those cultures match?
Are there certain types of clients that are better matched to certain types of PR practitioners? Like, is there a certain type of company that's best for a sole practitioner versus a boutique versus a large agency?
So I guess it depends, because, I came from a world, and it's definitely different now, and we can have this discussion. But when I was building my agency, it was really interesting that some of the bigger brands would come to us we were small. We were less than 50 people at the time, but we offered we were a very boutique agency. We had the flexibility, and we would turn on a dime. And, we would work on weekends. So one of our larger clients was JVC, and we had them for about 9 years. So they love the fact that around their biggest trade show, they weren't our only client, but we treated them like they were our only client. So that's a match. It's the size of the agency, the nimbleness. They wanted fresh perspective. But some might say, maybe a pharmaceutical client might want to go to a more corporate type buttoned up agency that understands certain protocols and what goes on in pharma. It depends.
Right. If you think about these different things, you think about total market share, not addressable market, but like total market. How much of the market does the customer serve?
Right.
And let's say, at the bottom is a startup that has no customers, so they don't serve
Right.
anybody. And at the top is, Toyota or Kroger or some
Yeah.
huge brand that
Big
serves
brands.
everybody. Okay, that's on one axis. And then on the other axis is the size of the provider. So you've got, your do-it-yourselfer, who's your
Mm-hmm.
startup pre-funded that has nothing, no money, no customer. So they're going to do it themselves. Once they get some seed money, maybe they'll bring in a sole practitioner. And
Right.
then maybe from there, they'll go to a boutique.
Yep.
And maybe from there to a small firm. And maybe from there to a mid-sized firm and a large firm. And if you
But
sort of
that's a big
stack that,
mistake. That's actually sometimes what startups do is rather than going to the sole practitioner, the boutique, and working their way up, the minute they start to get that funding, there's such a burn on the PR and the marketing when it should be focused on let's get our functionality of our service or our app or whatever it is, let's get that going, or our sales, then to be able to build along the way. So I just thought that was
it's
interesting.
totally counterintuitive. But having, launched a couple of tech startups myself that I sold, once you raise money, there's so much pressure on you
I
to grow.
know.
Because the people who invest in a tech startup, that is risk capital. And they're
Right.
looking for 6, 7, 8 times growth, 100 times growth, 1,000 times growth. And anything other than that, they'd rather it fizzle out and burn. So
Right.
they're putting pressure on you to put growth before efficiency,
I
despite
know.
uncertainty, just to try to capture market share. So you think about so I said Kroger, right?
Yep.
Kroger is, high market share, but most of their PR is handled in house. They don't really have an agency handling them. And then you think of like Blue Apron, which is
Yeah.
this meal kit company, venture backed, huge pressure to grow, small market share, but they got a big firm behind them because they're looking to
Sure.
drive growth. So it's interesting how it maps out. The quadrant. So if I think of these 4 quadrants here, one would be the micro quadrant, and that would be low market share and either do it yourself or sole
Yeah.
practitioner or boutique. You'd have your mid tier, which is still low market share, but with a small, medium, or large agency. And then you have your macro, which would be, your Krogers, your Sotheby's, your big law firms, which have a good amount of market share, but still tend to go either do it yourself, sole practitioner, or boutique. And then you've got your mega client,
Yeah.
right? Your Toyota, your Spotify, your Bank of America. And these are the ones that, have high market share and are going to go either, probably mid or large
Right.
agency.
Huge
And
agencies.
that's Edelman, Ogilvy,
Right.
Ketchum, Golan. And so if you think about where most of the action is, most of the action is small to medium sized businesses
Right.
that are either, low to mid tier market share and working either in-house or sole practitioner or with a boutique.
Yeah. A lot of
And
opportunity.
like when we go to PRSA and our community and the people that we talk to,
Mm.
most of those people are either sole practitioners or boutiques. That's where most of the work is. So it seems like that quadrant of sort of small to medium sized business that we're calling micro is really
Right.
the most exciting, probably underserved opportunity in the PR industry right now.
That's a nice hotspot. right there. And a sweet spot. If you really set your sight to it, that is so true.
So here's my little chart
Oh, and there's the quadrant.
that I made, right?
Yep, I
So you
think
see
you
the
could
market share
PDF
on one
it and
side,
download it.
and you see, yeah, I wanted to show it on my iPad here, but this Demio webcasting service doesn't let you hook up your
No.
iPad, which kind of sucks.
Oh.
So maybe I should go to Zoom because they do.
Yeah, I use
But
Zoom. I mean, I don't know Demio. This is the first time I've heard of them.
do you use Zoom for webinars?
So not for a webinar, just for my podcast for Women Worldwide.
Right, right. So if we think, I think it might be more useful to structure our conversation along these lines. Because if we mix, oh well, because what's good for a mega client is not good for a micro client or a
No.
macro client or a mid-tier client. They all have their unique needs. And you see in the bottom, I did those little dots,
Yeah.
and I said, in that little corner that's drawn with the red line there.
Yep.
I said, you got your pre-funded startup there and you've got your self-published author there.
Right.
The minute your self-published author gets a publisher, they're going to a boutique. And the
Mm-hmm.
minute the pre-funded startup gets some seed money, they're going to a sole practitioner.
Right.
So
Exactly.
those are kind of the opportunities. So when you think about it like that, what, and this is the rub here. And this is what you and I know better than anybody, okay? What are the conflicts of interest between a client who has needs that they want fulfilled and a
Right.
PR agency who has a portfolio of clients that they want to retain for the long term?
So when I
What do you
think
think about that?
of conflicts of interest, I think about how when I owned my agency, one of the first questions when we had a prospect, they always wanted to know what we did in their market. However, if you're working for somebody that is a direct competitor or too close for comfort, that's a conflict of interest. So if that's what you mean by conflict of interest also happens when you have a company that comes to you and they're all about sustainability, right? Or better yet, it's a vegan brand. They're not going to work with an agency that is promoting the meat industry. So that is a conflict of interest. Is that what you were referring to? Or just conflict in general where expectations are just so far off?
That could be a conflict. And I appreciate, the conflicts of interest with respect to client base. But I'm thinking the big conflict to me seems to be, that the agency can't really afford to overinvest in one client relationship because they have to maintain the needs of a portfolio of clients. They're non-exclusive. And that's
Right.
what every retainer agreement says.
Mm-hmm.
I agree to represent you non-exclusively. But the truth is, to the client is exclusive to themselves. And so it seems like, often those clients that may require a little bit more elbow grease to get results are often underserved and drop by the wayside just because the long-term commitment from a retainer standpoint isn't there.
Right.
And you get into the relationship, you negotiate the advance cancellation fee. Is it 30? Is it 60? Is it 90? Is it 6 months? How long do you have from when the client says we're done to wind down the account? That kind of tells you as an agency owner how much effort you can put into the relationship. And with a startup or a smaller company that
Startups need
maybe doesn't
more.
have
Right.
that forward-looking perspective of how long they're going to be around for. It's tougher for them to commit. So it seems like there is a bit of a conflict there in terms of like what the client needs and what the agency is staffed and has the economic resources to deliver.
So I think that all conflict, but I do think that if you're going to overpromise, then it's on the agency. Like that's an issue right there. So if you have a brand that is coming to you and you have a portfolio of business, and if you're sitting there saying we are nimble and we're going to work for you nonstop and it's going to be on the weekends, that's not, you're starting the relationship with the conflict, and that's not going to end very well. There's ways that, like I said, we were able to, JVC would always say to us, we feel like we're your only client. Ceridian used to say that to us, Washington Mutual. But it comes down to also, yes, it is the team and how well you mesh together, but it's also the process. It's what you put in place and your ability to have your team working like a fine-tuned machine. And there aren't struggles that slow you down. And if you actually have the resources that you say you have, and the contacts you say you have, and the inroads you say you have, then you are going to be able to deliver. You're going to have a great relationship. So I'm taking it from a positive side, but that all has to start at the very beginning. And then you're not going to worry so much about how you're wrapping this up, because they're going to want to renew with you.
Yeah, the other conflict I'm thinking of is subject matter expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this wouldn't be as much of an issue with like a B2C company, but I'm thinking of like niche B2Bs, which is kind of my space.
Yeah.
Tech, niche B2B. You're typically pitching someone who's got broad experience and perspective, who's been covering an industry for a decade. And if you walk into that industry with a pitch and you can't put it in context against the broader trends of the industry, you can't resonate and interest them in that pitch. But the client has that information. And so it's kind of, counterintuitive that a media relations generalist would be
Right.
tasked to do the pitch with niche information, when in fact the client has the information themselves and they're probably better suited for the pitch.
So I think you always have to go into your meetings knowing that you certainly are going to do your due diligence and your homework. If you are not staffed with people who have subject matter expertise, that you are willing to, my goodness, that's where we build inroads with freelancers and partners who can actually help it, with whether it's within the pitch or when you're actually working with the client. But I think it's to be able to get to a point of, we know what we know how to build relationships, we understand how to make inroads, and we are creative pitchers with the knowledge that the client, the prospect, can give. That's where the marriage, that's where the magic can happen. So I would never walk into a meeting saying that I would know everything or I have everything, because I think the client wants to be involved and they want to be able to impart that knowledge, be able to share, and then it's more of a team effort going forward anywhere. Anyway, yes, they want to be advised. There's no doubt about it. But you're going to extract a lot of great information from them and then bring resources to the table that can certainly complement.
In terms of like all the stakeholders, because, textbook definition of PR, stakeholder relations, more than just media relations, right? You've got journalists, you've got trade associations, you've got professional societies, you've got investors, you've got legislators, you've got channel partners, you've got influencers. Gosh, in some organizations, PR may even help with internal communications, communicating with employees or suppliers. So with that in mind,
and customers today,
and customers as well, customer service, sure.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, your experience regarding how clients prioritize stakeholders when they're coming to PR, which stakeholder? I mean, you and I can talk till the cows come home about how PR does everything, but what do clients really want?
I know
Why
we
is it
do.
they come to PR?
So here's the thing: is anything broken? Number one, if anything is broken with any one of your stakeholder groups, whether it's one, two, or all of them, you're going to prioritize. Because remember that bucket that I told you about? We've got a little reputation issue. That can quickly become a priority. The only way to find out is to be able to do a communications audit and to understand how well you're doing or not well with your customers. Where are you breaking down? Where are the bottlenecks? Where are there reputational issues? I think as you do that audit, very quickly, you're going to find out the priorities. And let's just say, if you're having an issue with your customers, I would highly recommend starting with seeing what's going on and communication there, because if there are a lot of issues, are you really going to start to get out there with the media and publicizing something when everybody who's supposedly your fans, your most important fans, are not happy? So there's a big disconnect there.
I'm reading the book by the CEO of Meltwater, and it's
Which book?
called Meltwater is, they compete with Cision,
Yeah, no, I know
and
Meltwater. What's the book's name?
it's called Outside Insight,
Oh,
and it's all about audits,
cool.
external data.
Wow.
And I'm about halfway through, and right now it's pretty much about how companies, when they got CRMs, became very focused on using internal data for business decisions.
Yeah.
But in fact, using internal data for business decisions is looking at data in a vacuum. As you just said, you've
Right.
got to do an audit. You've got to look outside. And that's kind of
Absolutely.
his pitch, outside in. And he talks about Kodak, and all
Oh,
the outside data that was available. And they actually had the patent to the first digital camera.
isn't that crazy?
And they
But
still lost that battle, And then he talks about, 6 days after their bankruptcy, Zuckerberg bought Instagram for $1 billion.
wow.
And everyone thought he was crazy. And, he actually
Yeah.
got a really good price on it because, that was the one threat he had. And
Exactly.
he owns it now.
So
And then he also talks about, just one more example.
yeah.
He also talks about BlackBerry and how all the information was out there, but they ignored the outside information. They were focused on their data in their CRM, and they missed that entire development, and they're out of business in 2 years.
So this reminds me of Alan Adamson's book called Shift Ahead. And it's a good book. So I interviewed Alan, and he talked about the Kodak example. I'm not sure if BlackBerry was in the book, but Kodak knew that digital was coming. Kodak saw it, but their main business was film. They were making a lot of money on film, so they didn't shift ahead. And that's the whole thing that you have to do. If you're just focused on the inside and within your boardroom and your own people, it's that data on the outside that's really going to get you to where you need to be. So this whole Kodak could have been avoided.
In terms of the data and the audit, I mean, it's a rabbit hole, man. You could get lost in it forever, and it's also possible to misread the tea leaves and think, oh my God, this causes this, but it might not be. They just might be two metrics moving in the same direction. So, with that said, like if you're going in to pitch a new piece of business, any tips you can give us on like what outside audit metrics you would sort of grab to walk into that room when you're pitching for the business?
So in terms of when you say metrics to pitch for the business,
any data you'd look for,
yeah,
because you want to go in there and say, look, here's what you're missing, here's what they think, here's what the bias is.
Yeah, so you're going to be looking for, I mean, you have to know a lot about their markets and what people are saying. So you're going to want to make sure you're tapped into social media. That is one thing that's really important. And there are plenty of listening tools out there. There is no shortage to be able to capture conversations about brands. I'm not going to say that sentiment is perfect, but you can certainly pull enough to be able to say, hey, you had this product launch. This is what we picked up. You had some great media coverage, but you were not doing so well here. So you can always bring those outside conversations. But I'll tell you something. This goes back a little ways, but when we were pitching the city of Hartford for their, they were doing a whole downtown renovation. It wasn't just about looking at articles and their communication in terms of the news and press. We literally went man on the street to get qualitative data, to talk to people about the city of Hartford. And what would you think if Hartford, did a whole rehaul and there were new restaurants and places to go? So let's not forget about the qualitative data too, even when we're gearing up for pitches, if you have time to be able to do that, to talk to people, to talk to stakeholders, to look at what customers say. That also goes a long way.
In terms of outcomes, what do clients want most as an outcome? I mean, do they just want, for the most part, their picture in the paper so they can frame it and put it on their wall? And be honest here.
No, so here's the thing. I think in PR, I'm not sure if it's ourselves or the brands and the professionals behind the brands that talk a lot about the coverage, but we all know that at the end of the day, somehow it turns into a relationship, and that relationship turns into business or something that is good for the business. There are higher level buckets. So if we're, everything we do, all of our communication has to be tied to the business goals. So that's really what they want. Even if they say, oh, we want impact through relationships. Well, what does that mean? There's some higher level business goal. So that's customer satisfaction. That has to do with our brand health and our reputation and public opinion. That's sales and lead generation. That's around our ability to be innovative. That maybe it's around our, employee productivity. Those are business goals and buckets that we are tied to, no matter how many times people say, oh, it's about the coverage, oh, it's this brand awareness. It still ties back. And PR is a part of that.
But it's so hard to draw a straight line between
can't.
that coverage and a sale,
But it is up to us so this whole notion of these impressions and the add value equivalency, no AVEs. What did you do? Where did the coverage lead you to? What happened? You get a piece of coverage. Did that ignite the blogosphere or Twitter? Did it send people did that news article get people over to your website? What did they do from there? What was their behavior? Did they download something? Did they become a lead? Did they actually purchase something? Did they inquire for more information? So it's what happens afterward. And PR can get you there. So PR, because we work with marketing and customer service and web and the brand team, we're in the mix. We're all in this together. And the more that we can work together, we are a part of the click-to conversion. And we need to show our part and then attach so that it's never going to be a straight line. It's not.
Clearly, the objective is to change behavior, but since that is tough to measure, if we look at outputs for a minute instead of outcomes, and we think about these outputs, a media placement, a self-published blog post, an authored blog post published elsewhere, a byliner, we'll call it. A panel appearance at a conference, a keynote address at a professional society, influencer engagement, social media followers. If we look at those different metrics or those different outputs, can you prioritize those in terms of what you think the client wants? Not what should they want or do we think they should want, but what do you think what do most clients want from PR?
I'm not sure if it matters what they want as opposed to what resonates the most with the people they serve. When they see that something works and something gets their customers excited, they're going to want to do more of that. So if you're just putting out blog posts for the sake of blog posts and there's no engagement, there's no deep conversation, there's nobody taking that next step to do something, then why do it? I mean, okay, so there could be SEO value, there could be backlinks, but that then creates, gets you closer to an outcome. I think you have to look at your outputs. I had a CEO once say to me, oh my gosh, a technology company, well, I don't understand how our competitor tweets like 20 times more than we do a day. That didn't matter. That's an output. It's the fact that the people that we're tweeting with are actually engaged and doing something, because the 20 tweets that were being sent out by the competitor, there was nothing going on. It was just a bunch of tweets. So I really think it depends on who you're serving, what excites them. And once you can figure that out, you're going to want to capitalize on that.
I heard at the PRSA conference, were you there this year?
No, I was not. That was
okay. Then I don't feel bad that I missed you.
Yeah, no, you
weren't there. One of the things I kept hearing on the floor from a lot of people was, PR is becoming more like marketing. Marketing is absorbing PR. That was kind of the buzz. True? Not true? Are you hearing that? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, sure. Blurring of the lines. We're doing, you look at the big agencies with Edelman, creative directors, sizzle campaigns. I was just reading, I think it was about The Bell, the Bell Hotel, which is a Taco Bell hotel that opened, what was it, Palm Springs in California for a certain amount of time.
It was a pop-up hotel?
Yes, this was an Edelman campaign, which typically would have been marketing.
Who would want to stay in a Taco Bell hotel?
I don't know. I'm not
like
sure.
Slumming it. That's a definition.
I mean,
like sobering up at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Let's go hit Taco Bell.
I don't know. I'm not a Taco Bell enthusiast, but I'm sure there are some folks who really
I can get excited once in a while about Taco Bell. Once in a while.
I love the little dog. I mean, I love the Chihuahua, right? So
I like the tacos. I mean, I'm good for a junky taco once in a while.
There you go.
And I'm an Angelino, so I know good tacos. But I like an American Mexican taco.
Yeah. So
Anyways.
That's an example of, oh my gosh, who would have ever thought? Today, public relations, everything, it's digital. Are we also getting into we're doing SEO, we're doing some media buys, right? Like there might be some Facebook ads, whatever. You see, the lines are blurring. However, I do think that public relations, what we do, we have this lens on the reputation. And I do not see marketing all of a sudden jumping in and being the ones who are maintaining and protecting and really listening to the public and solving some of the issues that go on when brands put their feet in their mouths. You know what I mean? So there are certain things that public relations, when it comes to reputation, that is still our domain in a sense, where we are the crisis doctors, or should be the pre-crisis doctors. But we do, there are similar things, yes.
Are there boundaries we don't cross?
It's interesting because I can't say what was done for The Bell and some of these campaigns by bigger agencies or maybe mid-sized agencies. But what I can say is that, when it comes to big media buys, that is not something typically that public relations does for TV, right? So are our advertising agencies still doing that? Is public or PR people jumping into programmatic ad buys? I don't think so. Do we need to know about all of these things? Yes, because that's artificial intelligence. So we better know, because we need to be able to communicate to customers how we're doing things and come across with transparency. So I'll throw it to you. What do you think? Are there clear boundaries? Are there things that we're not doing? It's hard to say when you start looking at the
You
big
know,
agencies.
the areas you think of that are usually like, oh my God, I don't do that, is like PPC,
Yeah,
you know, AdWords, pay per click. I mean, that's
right.
a niche, right?
Yeah,
People do that and just that. Creative advertising.
right.
Although, you know, in social, you
Yeah,
know, you do
see?
kind of come up with photos or you
Right.
might
And
put something together with
digital,
video. So yeah, I mean,
absolutely. We're doing the
maybe
video
not
work.
pay. Yeah, I guess
Television,
television advertising
right.
would kind of be, you know, that would be an area like, whoa, I don't know how to do the ad buy. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
That's
And
all. That's a
also,
niche.
so here's something
Programmatic
else
too. I mean,
too.
I don't know programmatic. Do you know programmatic?
No, so I mean, I worked with a marketing agency. I was working with their leaders, and they were all about programmatic. So they had even created their own platform that allowed you to kind of grasp programmatic and bring in
Mhm.
third-party data to make better ad buys for their clients. But
Right.
no, I never dabbled in that. We only just publicized it. So, but there was another thing that, when you think about public relations, that's, the upholding the reputation, maintaining the reputation of the entire brand. We're not just focused on one sole product that's being launched, where marketing might be looking at a product that they're promoting and selling. We are going across as well. And it's always that brand reputation.
Deirdre, let's talk a little bit about the classes that you made for LinkedIn Learning.
Sure.
Because I know you have 3 classes on LinkedIn Learning. Is it 3?
Oh, no, I think I have like 8.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible. Tell us about that. How is that going? How much was it hard to do? Was it worth it? Is it
Oh, yes.
profitable?
So, yes, it was worth it. No, it wasn't hard to do because I've been teaching for a really long time. I mean, I started teaching in education at Fairleigh Dickinson University. I was there for 7 years in the classroom. I was at NYU in the classroom for 4 years, UMass online for 4+ years, Rutgers. Doing those videos, those courses, it's just like teaching, except you're talking to the camera and it's not over a very, very long period of time. They're short scripts. It's also kind of like writing a book in a sense that I'm an author, so I published Answers for Modern Communicators. That was my latest book back in 2017. I think it was October it came out. You look at your book in terms of chapters. You look at LinkedIn learning courses in terms of kind of, let's say, chapters with scripts. So you would have these different chapters, and each chapter would have 5 scripts, and you're attacking it in chunks, the same way that you would do with a book. With books, you work with editors. With the LinkedIn Learning course, you work with a producer who helps you kind of massage the scripts and make sure that they're on point and that they are going to sound good. So when you get into the studio, you can record them. Recording is like publishing your book. And it was really a wonderful process because I believe in media reinvention. So as a traditional author and somebody in the classroom, going to video was a natural way to kind of reinvent my brand. If I'm talking about video and telling my clients, so now I'm a consultant and I have a communications consulting firm. If I am telling a client, you really need to be doing video. Well, Deirdre, what video have you done? Oh, by the way, I'm a LinkedIn Learning author. I'm a video podcaster. I'm kind of walking my talk.
In terms of how you might combine online learning with consulting or conference, have you thought that through a little bit and any ideas around that?
So online learning and conference.
You
Tell
know,
me
you know this
more.
whole this whole flip the classroom
Okay.
idea. The whole flip the classroom idea is not my idea. It's been around for a while, and the concept is, um, it doesn't make sense to
Oh,
go to a room and hear someone give a spiel. They should give their
well,
spiel on the video, and then you go to the room and it's a workshop and you're
hmm,
mentored, and it's more of an exchange. Or, you think about the TED model,
yeah,
where you've got these, these pitches online, but that doesn't replace the value of going to a conference where you can network with people and have an
right,
experience. And you think about what's happening with automation and technology. I mean, what really is going to be left besides the experience? I mean, you've
right.
got artificial intelligence now writing content, writing
Yep,
news stories. I'm sure it won't be long until they're writing press releases.
yep.
And I was reading actually a study from Annenberg that
Hmm.
said, we're approaching an age where people aren't going to care the source. They're not going to care they're not going to care the difference between something coming from a journalist, something coming from a company, something coming from an influencer. I mean, we're in this place now where it's all spin all the time. There
Yeah, but
is
that
no
makes the
objectivity
hair on the
anymore.
back of my neck stand up.
But
Like
it's
I know
a
it's
scary
reality.
world.
I know it's reality, but that is a really tricky place to be because then anybody just can report facts. How do you know what facts are? I mean, there's so much opinion, there's so much hyperbole. That's a really tough place. So I don't know. I'm thinking that I know the machine can do a lot. We're not just talking artificial intelligence, but when you get into machine learning, it's being able to understand things that have happened, to be able to have nuances moving forward. But the one thing that can't be replaced are the relationships and the emotional intelligence and what we build together. So tying that back into the classroom, the workshop, I'm okay with however you want to label this place where we all still get together because it's the people that are going to make a difference. And I do think that being in the same proximity, whether you are in a classroom or you want to call it this new workshop space where you all watch it online and then you all gather and you build on it, we need that. That is still important because I
The
would
experience, the
the
human experience
experience
where people
and
come together.
yes, yes, because I mean the model that I have now is, and I stand up on stage and tell this story. It's the fact that it's really important that we need to feel in our communication. Feel stands for face fears, engage with empathy, use ethics and good judgment, and unleash the love. Because guess what? If we use a feel lens over all of our strategy, we're that's what the robot doesn't have. Robots can't feel. So, in an age of marketing automation, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, feel is how you're going to get to the real relationship. That's not to say that the robots are not going to do what the robots do, but there's a very human element. And feel is a gift, and so is the fact that we can have an experience together.
We had on PR Tech Wednesdays a few weeks back Brian Snyder, who's director of analytics from Golan,
Yeah,
and he's got a unit called CXPR, Customer Experience PR,
yeah,
and it's really interesting. It's kind of about how they engage in discrete communications with customers at different stages of the buying journey and after the
right.
purchase too. Because interacting with clients
Yeah.
is public relations as well now. And so what
Oh,
they
that's a good
sort of
point.
do is they run like a quarterbacking center where they keep a sort of a big picture view of all the communications that are going down. And if an influencer comes in or someone with a big audience, they make sure that everyone's handled, relative to, their reach and resonance, which I thought was kind of interesting. If you want to watch it,
I do.
it's on my the YouTube channel for. I'll send you a link, but
Cool.
if you're listening and you want to watch it, just go to the YouTube channel for PR Tech Wednesdays, and it's the Brian Snyder
Cool.
interview.
All right, so I'm going to look at that. You know what's really interesting? We talk a lot about CX, right? The customer experience. I had two guests on my show that talked about IX. You got to have IX first before you have CX. And IX is your internal experience. And I am just so for the internal experience and what goes on with your communication on the inside, because if you don't get that right, you're never going to get to CX. So I just wanted to throw that out there. IX is not mine, but that is something that I think is really important to think about as we move forward and we have all this automation.
And that's the employee experience. How
Yep.
difficult is it for people to get their jobs done? Are they hamstrung on these arcane, obsolete technology platforms that don't keep up, which usually is the case because
Yeah.
who can afford to compete with Facebook, which sort of sets the benchmark for user experience nowadays.
Right. And if
I mean, I
everybody,
even struggle with the Google products. I mean, I think some of
yeah,
the Google applications are terrible.
I think, spinning your wheels with resources that are not working for you, becoming frustrated. The whole goal inside is to build your champions, right? To get them excited, to have them, using the resources and to be able to create and innovate together. But that's not going to happen if tools are obsolete, outdated, if you're not paying attention to the communication. So I just think there's a lot of work on the inside to support the CX. The IX will support the CX.
Deirdre, you've published how many books?
6.
So 6 books. You've taught, so many different at so many universities. You've taught probably all over the world with clients. I've seen you lead sessions at, at workshop, at trade conferences. I mean, you have led and inspired a lot of people, and I know
Thank
you're doing
you.
it now with Women Worldwide. So tell us about that.
Okay,
What is
so
that all about?
that's a passion project. Women Worldwide was just, it's for 2 reasons. Number one, I think I mentioned before that I'm all about reinvention through media. So as I was telling companies and brands, oh my gosh, podcasting, the resurgence of podcasting, I wanted to experience it myself. And at the time, I think it was in 2014 or early 2014, I saw the resurgence of podcasts. And I also saw that women hosts were only 13% of the podcasts out there. So that was an opportunity, and you could see all the things that were happening with women and women in leadership and advancement.
Right.
So I really thought that would be something that would help the market. Now, on another note, the other reason why it's Women Worldwide is because women at the time and young girls were being bullied and cyber harassed. And I had learned of a famous story of a young girl out of Montreal who committed suicide. She was cyberbullied. She was harassed. I had met her mother, and I was so taken with this story because her name was Amanda Todd. And Amanda showed a 9-minute flip card video on YouTube that shared her story. And whether she wrote these words or it just hit me, she was basically saying, I had no voice and I didn't have anybody to turn to. So Women Worldwide is a place where women have a voice, have a platform, can share their story. And you know what? You're not alone. And that's kind of how the podcast was born. And we have men on the show too, every so often, because I don't want to not include men. We're all in this together. So, but that's why Women Worldwide came into being.
And if someone wants to listen, how do they find it?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's Google Play. You can go to womenworldwideshow.com. But I'm also trying to have people watch the show. It's on YouTube. So if you subscribe to the Deirdre Breckenridge channel, you'll get the shows, and you'll also learn a lot about this communication model that I've just recently launched.
I will put a link to that in the notes when I upload this onto YouTube so that people can find it.
Thank you.
Have you watched this new show on Apple TV called The Morning Show?
No, I haven't.
So Apple TV is now getting into the media business. I guess there's not as much headroom in the hardware business anymore. Now that they've got such market share. So, they've launched Apple TV, and it's, I think, $5 a month, and they have their own original programming. And one of the shows they've launched with is called The Morning Show. And it's a show about the Matt Lauer. Well, it's inspired by the Matt Lauer Me Too
Oh,
meltdown. And so the Matt Lauer character is played by Steve Carell. And then the female host of the show is Jennifer Aniston.
oh my gosh, this must be so good.
And Reese Witherspoon is brought in as sort of like the, rough around the edges, small town reporter to take the anchor chair from Steve Carell, aka Matt Lauer, when he's pushed out. And it's all about the Me Too movement, and it's
It's really
really interesting.
interesting.
Like, it covers like a new hire. No spoiler alerts, but like
Okay.
it covers the experiences that women would be in a professional environment, and how they might be pushed to sort of decide about whether or not to have sexual relations with a coworker
Right.
to further their career or not. And it's not cut and dry. It's
No.
not black and white.
Nope.
It's all gray area, but it's mind blowing, and it's
Oh, I gotta
so
see this.
fascinating. And it's a new episode every Thursday. And we're already like 8 episodes in. I promise you, if you do it, you're going to binge them all in
I
8 hours. They're
bet.
so good.
Okay, so we tend, when we find something we love, we're just such bingers. We were late to Game of Thrones, but my husband and I, we binge watched that so quickly. And how many seasons was it? That, House of Cards, and Scandal, and Mr. Robot.
Well, the interesting thing thematically about the TV show, which I think dovetails with a lot of themes I'm seeing in popular media, is this idea of the whistleblower, the
Yeah.
truth teller. The person who's like going to get out and
Right.
tell it like it is.
Yep.
And you see that you see that as such a big issue. I just read the new Malcolm Gladwell book,
Oh, I haven't read it yet.
Strangers, Talk to Strangers, something strangers. And he talks about, in one of the episodes, this archetype, which in Russian literature is called the holy fool. And the holy fool is kind of this ne'er-do-well, unbecoming character who no one wants around, but who tells the truth. And he says, the closest thing to it that we have in our culture would be, the kid who tells the emperor he's not wearing any clothes.
Right.
It's like nobody wants, in business, nobody wants to be that person.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be the whistleblower, because, once you're the whistleblower, you get that little fanfare and you set the record straight for a moment, but usually you get put out to pasture.
Well, look at, I don't want to bring up politics, but look at politics, whistleblower, right? So it's tough.
What is he living in Moscow? And you're talking about Snowden? He's living in Moscow, probably in faded clothing, and he can't see his family.
Right.
So that's the price. But we're in this environment now where it's like everybody wants to be a truth teller, and we need truth tellers. But the truth is, it's really hard to be a truth teller, because, the social consequences of isolation that go along with it are so steep.
Yeah, but oh my gosh, I mean, just being in public relations, from a professional standpoint, if you're a part of PRSA, there's a code of ethics, right? Like, we are truth tellers. We are supposed to have fairness. It's truth, fairness, objectivity, accuracy. Like, this is a part of what we're supposed to do. And to hear that, to be the truth teller, to be put out, at the end of the day, what do you have left? You have your integrity.
I would suggest that there's a pretty wide delta between what you're supposed to do and what actually gets done.
Exactly.
And so if we look at the sort of the delta between what organizations say and what organizations do, it's filling that gap is tough.
I mean, 39% of millennials believe that their companies are behaving unethically. And you might not say, oh, well, it's not 50%, but that's just one stat. When I talked to, literally had conversations with 75 millennials over the past year, it was more than 39% in my sample group. I talked about lack of ethics and values and what goes on social media. So yeah, I mean, this is just an area. I think this is a whole other webinar.
Well, just a quick overview on it. I just published a piece on Marketing Land about this topic.
Really?
And
Okay.
the headline is Lies and Bias on the Rise in Marketing and Public Relations.
Oof.
And I had been to the symposium for the relevance report, which was released at Annenberg, and I read through it. It's an annual report of 30 essays by board members and students and teachers. And 17 of the 30 essays dealt with some aspect of deceit
Yes.
or deception. And, one of the essays written by a second year grad student, Kathy Park, was all about how marketers encourage non-disclosure when they pay influencers to post about them on social media. And they quoted a report from MediaKicks that said 7% of endorsements on social media don't have any disclosure. And these are by the top 50 paid celebrity influencers.
So
it wouldn't be hard for the FTC to nab them, right? It's happening in broad daylight. But
right.
But what's happening is the influencers are actually being told by the people paying them, hey, don't disclose.
Hey, don't disclose. Hey, don't worry about it. Here's the thing. That's why one of my courses for LinkedIn is a marketing ethics course, which covers ethics over your public relations, your digital advertising, any of your communication. And one of the things that has to happen, it's almost like it can start in the communications department defining your marketing ethics, but it has to penetrate your entire organization because everybody's talking. So this is just such a big nut to crack. And did you say it was 17 out of 30 essays?
17 of the 30 essays dealt with some aspect of deceit, aided and abetted by the advancement of technology and social media in what we all call the post-truth age.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. This has to come from the top down. And if there's not a lot of ethics going on in the marketing department, if there's not a lot of accuracy with things that are being reported, if there's a lot of hyperbole, whatever it is, if there's clear out lies, that starts at the top and is going to filter down everywhere.
What was most disheartening about the report, there's a piece in there written by a Google spokesperson who's on the board at Annenberg.
Yeah.
And it's a piece about how Google respects privacy with no mention of Project Dragonfly, which was their search engine project complicit with the Chinese government to help them spy on people's search. No mention of it at all. And here this is an academic report.
Right.
And they're allowing Google to repackage spin right through this. And, when they started the symposium, someone gave a speech, said, the great thing about Annenberg is we've got journalism and PR under one roof. So we fact check each other. And then this thing comes out, with this essay on how great Google is with no mention of Dragonfly.
Yeah, so transparency there. The ethics.
I guess they've shifted from don't do no evil to speak no evil.
Speak no evil.
Deirdre, thank you so much for doing this.
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate it. We are dark the next 2 weeks because the next Wednesday is going to be Christmas. The Wednesday after that is going to be New Year's Eve. But on Wednesday, January 8th, we've got Jay Baer of Convincing Convert. We're going to be talking to him about digital marketing and customer service strategy. After that, on January 15th, David Meerman Scott is going to be talking about his new book, Fanocracy. So I hope you'll join us for that. We've got a killer lineup of guests all through the end of March. And I'm so happy that we got you in, Deirdre.
Thank you.
Because you are definitely one of the shining stars and beacons in this community. And I want to thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much, Eric. It was great to chat with you. This was a really good discussion. So thanks for having me on your show.
I'm going to catch up with you offline as well.
Yeah, let's do that, definitely.
Okay, cool. All right, great talking to you.
Awesome.
Bye, everybody.
Great talking to you.
Thanks
Bye,
for
everyone.
joining us for PR Tech Wednesdays. It's Eric Schwartzman signing off.